Hello, everybody, and welcome to the discussion today. We are going to be talking about the audiobook, the upcoming audiobook that is the companion piece to the Amazon best-selling novel, Tomorrow's Flight, by Stephen Seifel and Emmy Ellington. Thank you all for joining me. And today we actually have another special guest. We have the actual narrator of the audiobook. This is Caroline Carrigan, who's joining us today. And Caroline, we're so excited to have you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, I want to kind of start a little big because Stephen, you let me know that you and Caroline have known each other for quite some time. I won't say how long, but Caroline, I believe that you started a play written and produced by Stephen in the 90s, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we did a play together. That's how we first met. And then we kind of lost touch and reconnected on Twitter a couple of years ago, I guess. And it was like, I wonder if that's Steve, but he had an avatar that was not, I never knew what that avatar was. It wasn't you though. So I was like, it couldn't be the same guy. And then, sometime later, he kind of was like, is this the Caroline Carrigan? I was like, yeah, is that you? And, so we reconnected through screenwriter Twitter, because I'm a screenwriter too, partly thanks to Steve. I mean, in the sense that he was encouraging to me as an actor in terms of discussing, motivation, plot, stuff like that. And he was very complimentary about my understanding of that. So.
I love that. I love that it brought you all back together all these, again, not saying how many years later. That's beautiful. Okay. So Stephen and Martin, this one is a question for you. After the reconnection with Caroline, how soon after did you know that she was the woman you wanted to narrate this audiobook? And have you always known you wanted it to be a woman narrator?
I would say no, we didn't always know that we wanted a woman. What we did was we did a table read, and through the table read, it started to develop. And one of the strongest scenes in our pilot episode for Tomorrow's Flight is one that Caroline's character was in, and Caroline did such a great job that we wanted to use her in our book launch. And then it was a natural progression, and Martin and I kept seeing that we wanted to target the book away from the typical thriller, which is older male oriented. And we did have a British narrator in mind early on, and so I'd say we switched over. He's very good, but we wanted to emphasize the female aspect of the story.
Brilliant. And I think Caroline would say that was a good move.
Well, maybe.
Oh no, so now I think we need to dive into the performance and the process side with that little comment, Stephen.
Well, this was my first audiobook, and I had actually, after the reading, there's a really good scene between the character I was playing and, I was like, why don't we go out in the desert and shoot this little scene? And they were both like, I have a better idea. Why don't you narrate the audiobook? So I kind of got thrown into it, and I was like, you guys have to understand this is there's going to be a huge learning curve. And I think they appreciate now that there was, I do have equipment, but it was all like I plugged in my recorder, and I was like, I got to update this. And they're like, oh, that particular piece of equipment is obsolete, and we just stopped updating it 6 months ago. I went to go update my computer, and like, no, we don't take your kind anymore. And so the technical side was challenging. There's an audio program I had to learn that was very challenging. And and I'm old, so I'm like, I don't want to learn. I just want to do it. So it took me a while, but I wanted it to be really good for these guys because, I think it's a fun read. There's how many characters, guys? 24 speaking characters at least?
At least. Significant roles even, and then a few minor roles.
Yeah. Yeah. So
up to 20 point of view characters.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there was, I'm recording in my closet here in California. So there's numerous challenges with that, one of which was like 110-degree heat. And I live in a neighborhood that's not terribly quiet. I mean, you think it is, but then as soon as you put on headphones, there's my neighbor's dog, who probably just even finishing up these last few chapters, my neighbor's dog is undergoing separation anxiety. So he howls for hours on end when my neighbor's not at home. Although I've occasionally gone to my neighbor and it's like, let Buddy come and sit with me while I record my audiobook. And it works out great for both of us. But yeah. And then COVID and smoke, and there's a lot of stuff that affects your voice that you don't really realize right away. So,
but you got through. That's amazing. And Martin and Stephen, you're talking about how many roles there are, how many characters there are, not to mention the narrator in general. When you were prepping Caroline for this audio recording, was there any specific direction that you gave her at the top of it to try to help ease all of that, knowing this was her first time doing an audiobook?
I don't think so. I don't remember giving much or any direction, really. I think Caroline's performance in the table read really sealed us both. I think that the one accent that she had the biggest trouble was the British pilot. But spoiler alert, he dies pretty quickly, so I think she was quite pleased about that.
He doesn't die that quickly, Martin.
Well, not for Caroline, he doesn't die very quickly, but for the pilot,
he talks a lot before he dies.
He does. He has a lot to say before he dies, to be fair. But no, I not really. No, Caroline would record a chapter, we would listen to it, and yeah, it was a pretty easy process because she is very good at it. So yeah.
Caroline, would you say that was the hardest part for you in recording it? Was not the interstitials or the changing in characters, but the changes in accents?
Yeah, probably, yeah. I mean, it wasn't that difficult, and I actually have, generally speaking, a pretty good British accent. But for some reason, with this character, I think it was also trying to speak like a man without like being a man, So the combination just, and I finally kind of decided to excuse it by going, he's gotten sort of mid-Atlantic because he's a pilot and, he flies back and forth. So he has one of those British accents where he goes back to England and people are like, you sound like an American now, And he's like, no, I don't. I don't know. Just to please. Well, we'll see. Yeah.
Hey, I can't wait to hear it. This next question is for all of you. Was there ever a part where the written word, because we all know in this room, there's a difference between what's written and what's spoken. Was there ever a time during this process where the written word wasn't completely translating to audio well? And if so, how did you adjust or compensate?
Well, yes, that was the case. There's a spot in the book that I screwed up at the last when I was proofing the galleys, and it's actually a very important place, and I haven't yet fixed the book, but we'll re-upload it eventually with that fix. But I had to alert Caroline to that, and I rewrote that for her, so it's different than in the book. And then there were a couple of tongue twisters probably that she kind of said, can we just go with this phrase instead of that? And I said, absolutely. It doesn't have to be a precise match. And I may even go back and match Caroline when we re-upload the book.
There's a very small percentage of people who have the book open at the same time they're listening to the audiobook.
Well, I think it even reads okay because it's, you're not looking at every word. You're kind of doing both. I mean, I watch TV sometimes with the closed captioning on, and I kind of bounce back and forth.
And the thing I think that's important to remember is that Caroline wasn't reading the book, she was performing the book. And there is a distinct difference between those two things. And I think the small changes that Caroline made in the performance of the book enhanced enhanced it. It didn't, there was nothing where we thought, oh, no, let's stick to what's on the written page. Is that because as I was reviewing the audio files that Caroline was uploading, I had the book open on my other screen and I was reading it. And you could see, obviously, then I could see where, there was words changed but it just flowed better because you're performing it, you're not reading it. So I think that's an important distinction.
To me, there were only a couple of places where it wasn't so much the way it was written. It's just that the way you take in the information from the page as opposed to hearing it. There was really only one place where I was like, when I say this out loud, you perceive it differently than when you read it on the page. And it's a minor thing. It had to do with the date. The only other thing I think is just the word peculiarly, which when I would just be in conversation and I say that, this is a very British word, Martin. I'm from the Midwest, so if you this is very technical, but if you put an L and an R next to each other, you might as well just tie my tongue up in knots because it's just peculiarly. Saying it in conversation, but every time I'd see that on the page, I'd be like, oh, I got to ramp up into this one. And there's a lot of outtakes of me going peculiarly. So, but I think I got through all of them. If you want to do a drinking game, though, that's a good one to.
I remember that.
I love it. Well, speaking of all of the takes and all of the different words, Caroline, we already established this is your first audiobook. So we talked about why Martin and Stephen chosen you, but why did you choose this project? And how does that fit into your overall goals going forward as an artist?
Well, I like the book. It's a lot of fun, and it's fun to read. There's places where, it's fun to read out loud. I enjoyed reading it. There's places of just beautiful description. I liked the tension of it. I also, I'm a filmmaker myself, so it was really fun to, for instance, work on the pacing, because as doing everything myself, I got to go back in and, I kind of relaxed into the process as it went on and did a lot of work, not a lot of work, but edited it for pacing and to give myself a chance between breaths to change character I would often record very late at night because of all of these conditions. So it was a little bit of a bedtime story to me, and I liked the process of ending a chapter and leaving people on like, what's going to happen next kind of thing. And it is a book that has a lot of that, the chapters always end on something like somebody almost being eaten or somebody actually being eaten. There's dinosaurs and there's T-Rexes in this. So, I think it's safe to say some people get eaten.
I don't think you'll get in trouble for giving that away.
I think it's like Chekhov's gun if there's a T-Rex on the cover.
Exactly. So do you think that this is going to affect you as a screenwriter and a filmmaker going forward as well, going through this process? Was there anything you learned about yourself or the process when you were going through?
I think it's more one of the reasons I was curious about doing audiobooks is because I'm an actor, but I haven't been concentrating that much on that this year. And I was also looking for something just portable, a portable skill. And what I like as an artist about reading audiobooks is you can do it anywhere. One of the things that did drive me a little bit crazy during COVID because of isolation was that I was listening to the sound of my own voice during all my waking hours, and I got to the point where I was like, I just want to hear anybody's voice but mine, but it's, I think it's fun,
I like that.
Miss it now that we're done.
Well, you're saying now that we're done. So Martin, Stephen, how close to done are we on your end? Because I know you've got the Amazon and the ACX process and all of that. So how has that process been, and how close are we, those of us who are not part of the process, to getting to listen to this audiobook?
We're a few weeks away. It's got to be uploaded. The final sort of version now has to go to ACX, and they've got to approve it. So I think there's a couple of small bits left.
Yeah.
There's a 5-minute book trailer to do, and an end credit, which can literally just be the end. And that's got to be uploaded. We've uploaded the cover now. So once ACX, I've done a few of these with ACX, and they are pretty quick. Once you've uploaded the final files, you normally have something within a week or 10 days. And then we'll sort of figure out what we're going to do with it and how to market it and how to launch it and this kind of thing. So yeah, I'd say we're only a few weeks away now, and it shall be released into the world.
Or unleashed, depending on that too.
I like that, yeah. It shall be unleashed into the world, yeah.
So how has this process been in terms of, would you do it all over again after you've gone through all this?
I would. I don't know whether Caroline and Stephen would, but I would, yeah, because I love it. I love any creative process. And I mean, I spent the weekend knitting together all the separate sections of the audio book. So we've now got one complete file that is almost like a CD version, I guess, that we can stick onto flash drives and send to people and for promotions and things like that. And I love all that sort of messing about and technical and things, you know. So yeah, I mean, this is the 4th audio book, and I've got a 5th one due to start with Jonathan, who did a couple of previous ones for me. So yeah, no, I enjoy the process, and I enjoy the end product as well. Yeah, but I can't say Caroline.
We've also talked about writing a sequel, which we won't do unless somebody asks us, and asks us generally with money. And that would, and with that said, we would want to do the entire process again as well, all the way through the audiobook.
So do any of you have any last thoughts, little teasers or spoilers that you want to give away before we wrap this up?
It's brilliant and you should buy it. Would be the most straightforward answer, but it's a great companion. I mean, we have plans for a hardback version as well. So we'll have the Kindle, we'll have the paperback, we'll have the hardback, and we'll have the audio. And I mean, we'd love to film that sequence that Caroline spoke about earlier as well in the desert, because it is such a powerful piece as well, and it plays so well. So yeah, I mean, we'll have the complete set for tomorrow's flight, and you know, yeah.
I actually driving through I was driving through part of the United States where this book takes place, and the whole time I was driving through it, I was thinking this would make a great book for this particular, you know, to have on the car while you're driving through this particular area, or on an airplane. I was also thinking. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Should I say this would make a great plane book? And then I thought, well, I think if with what everybody's going through on airplanes these days, you'd listen to this book and you'd be like, oh, what's happening? You know, my flight's delayed. Not so bad compared to what happens to these people. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, if you haven't read the book, you've got a chance to go get it on Amazon, Tomorrow's Flight, and very soon you'll also have the chance to listen to the audiobook. I want to thank Stephen and Martin and Caroline for joining me today.
Thank you.
Everyone, stay tuned for when you can buy that audiobook.